Hey you, do me a favor and take a good look at this picture, because what you're seeing right now is a war crime being committed. This picture was taken in 1966, and this was the time when America finally locked in and had the full intention of overthrowing communism in Vietnam. It launched a full ground-scale invasion against the Viet Cong, and by the end of the year, there would be about 385,000 Americans stationed in Vietnam. The common view that was shared by the American society at this point was confidence and optimism. I mean, why wouldn't they be confident and optimistic? We were victorious in World War II, and we saved the Korean Peninsula from becoming a communist peninsula. This is a simple war in the jungles of Vietnam. Oh, that will be over soon. Yeah, they were very wrong about that. But you have to give it to the Americans. They were somewhat right to be confident. America in the 1960s had the most advanced military apparatus in the world. There was no country in the world that could match the Americans in terms of pure military might. So, hundreds of thousands of men were enlisted in the hopes of a quick and easy victory. And soon, it turned out to be a David and Goliath situation. If you're familiar with how the story goes, right? Americans soon realized that the Vietnamese outrightly refused to fight a traditional war, where the might of the American military complex could be realized. The Vietnamese, just like David in the Book of Samuel, did not engage the Goliath in a conventional warfare and absolutely perfected the use of spikes. Spikes, and more spikes. Spikes laced with poison and spikes laced with poop. It would be a grand understatement to say that the Americans were not having a very good time in Vietnam. And the American public, right? The American public in the opposite side of the world, they were not blind to what was going on. To understand this, you need to realize that the war in Vietnam was a very big moment for journalism and war correspondence. This was a time when war journalism played such a crucial role to inform the American public of the horrors endured by American soldiers, and also, surprisingly, the horrors inflicted by Americans on native Vietnamese people. You might be surprised to hear that the journalists deep in the forest of Vietnam had a lot more freedom in what they could capture on their cameras and published later on. This time was inarguably right in the middle of the golden age of journalism, when almost every American household had a television, and most Americans put a very high amount of trust into these institutions, which clearly is not the case anymore. This led to media outlets like CBS and Time magazines bringing in massive amounts of profit. This meant that they could send out journalists and photographers to investigate, document, and eventually publish what was happening all around the world. That is exactly what happened in 1966 in Vietnam, when Tim Bowden flew to Da Nang in South Vietnam along with his Marine bodyguard, Jim Keith. The Americans could fly you anywhere you wanted to go. This was the first and last open war in which they would welcome correspondents from anywhere to see how well they were fighting communism. Before we continue any further, I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps me out. Thank you. The Americans had this clever little slogan by which they planned to win Vietnam. Winning the hearts and minds of the people. The Americans, well, they thought that the Vietnamese would greet them as liberators from the oppressive forces of communism and Ho Chi Minh. The Americans thought they would win the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese. But as the war dragged on, they realized that that wasn't really happening. Instead, the average American was getting absolutely battered. The Marines themselves were trained to storm beachheads and take territory quickly. The North Vietnamese guerrilla tactics did not suit their style. These were the words of Mr. Tim Bowden. The average American was getting agitated, right? And full of paranoia, seeing their friends get impaled on pikes and dying of sepsis days later. These young boys who were conscripted into the war had never seen a war except on televisions and occasionally hearing their fathers talk about the Nazis. Now, they were in a different continent to fight communism and defend the sanctity of capitalism. And so there were war crimes. Imagine yourself as an American GI, just walking through a Vietnamese village. These people will avoid doing anything with you. They would avoid eye contact and avoid speaking with you because that could be the reason why they do not live in a few days. Let me explain here. Most rural Vietnamese did not side with either the Americans or the communists in the war. They just wanted to, continue living just like us. If they were found helping Americans, the Viet Cong would basically massacre them, right? It wasn't very good for them. On the other hand, you had the Americans who could not tell who was a civilian and who was helping the Viet Cong. This led to some incidents where Americans did some good old war crimes, like the infamous My Lai massacre, where American soldiers from Charlie Company, commanded by Captain Ernest Medina and one platoon led by William Calley, entered a village, and to their absolute horror, they found unarmed civilians, women, children, and elderly people, right? They systematically erased hundreds of these people. The women, well, they were violated and killed later on. This remains one of the worst war crimes ever committed in American history. And the reason why we know this in the first place is because of a few brave men and journalists. There probably is a lot of stories similar to this, but we simply won't ever know about them because investigative journalism is effectively dead and whistleblowing has become very dangerous. This world has not gotten less evil by any means, but we have gotten better at hiding it. The picture that I showed in the beginning was taken by Mr. Tim Bowden, and what it shows is American soldiers forcing Vietnamese civilians to march on the field and turning them into living, walking landmine detectors. As Tim Bowden writes, earlier in the patrol, I was horrified to see Marine Patrol Commander round up old men and women and make them walk in front of 2 tanks as human mine detectors across a section of rough country. When I asked about this, the patrol leader told me that he had lost his best corporal a week before when he stepped on a booby trap in that area. He said the villagers knew where the landmines were and would cluster around and not move when they approached one. While understandable in one way, this did not look good, nor did it win any hearts and minds. This is why the Americans eventually lost the war. When I was reading about the Vietnam War and eventually saw this picture, I did not know that the civilians in here knew the locations of the landmine at all and were hiding it from the Americans. Even if the civilians in here distrusted Americans and wanted them to lose the war, would this be justified? Would the actions of the Americans be justified? And the answer is no, right? This is a war crime. If civilians or prisoners of war are forced to walk in front of the military to trigger mines and shield troops from damage or danger, that is considered a war crime under modern international law, right? Human rights. This is such an ugly picture. It's suffocating. We like to pretend and play that we are civilized, understanding people who can get along well, right? If we just tried. In another world, if the circumstances were to change drastically, I could be the civilian marching in front of you, and you, the viewer, could be the American GI watching and thinking to yourself, how the fuck did I end up here? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help out the channel, as it really means a lot to me. I am going to work on new content pretty soon, so definitely stick around for that, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.